We're doing pre-roll now?
Yep.
When it comes to hazmat response, speed and accuracy are everything.
Speed and power, baby.
Speed and power, speed and power. Well, that's a Clarkson Farm thing, obviously. But speed and accuracy now, that's a 908 thing.
Right, that little black box, if you will. It's now the little red box, too.
Yeah, and if you wonder why hazmat teams around the world are starting to trust the 908 devices, it's because their handheld MX908 and the Explorer IR, they are absolutely changing the game.
Right, the MX908, that's the one of those few devices out there that can identify the Novichoks, right?
Yep, yeah, you can identify all sorts of chemical warfare agents, pharmaceutical-based agents, drugs, explosives, and here's the key with the 908, at trace levels.
I love it. That's awesome because the Explorer IR can identify and quantify over 5,000 gas and vapors in seconds, and it's truly changing the game.
It is. It's why the 908 devices is taking over the world and becoming super trusted by all the hazmat teams that are out there. If you guys don't have a 908 device or an Explorer IR, go to 908devices.com and upgrade your meter toolbox. Hey everybody.
How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
I'm repping our new, swag from Jake, his new show, Hazard Class.
I love it. I had gotten a mullet for Halloween, and I totally forgot I was gonna put it on for this episode to do it. Yes, Bob's children are growing up so quickly. He's helping produce the Hazard Class, and this show as well is kind of partially dedicated to another podcast that we're launching under the umbrella of the Hazmat Guys, and it's going to be mostly focused on industrial work. So we figured we would kind of do an industrial thing today. But before that, there's not a whole lot else to mention, but we do have one or two more things coming up. Yeah,
we got Battery Destroyer 4 is still being put together. There's a ton of freaking video on this thing. I got to put it. It's a lot, but the conferences are done for the year, thankfully. And I'm headed out in a couple hours to great state of Utah.
Ooh.
Do some battery training.
Hey, if I wanted to get the T-shirt that you've got on, where can I get it?
You can go on our website, thehazmatguys.com, and you just find the Jake show. It's the Hazard Class show, and he's got a whole list of swag on there. There's some funny stuff in there. He's got some pretty good ones.
And while you're there, you can pick up all sorts of other swag and T-shirts and things like that. It's a good place to go Christmas shopping for the loved one.
I love it. All right. So, going with the industrial theme.
Yes, we got a little
industrial show.
We do. We have a case study, and we kind of like the case studies because sometimes we can learn a lot from them. So on January 28th of 2001, between about 8:45 and 10:15 a.m., notice that time gap when they don't really know when something happened, that tends to be bad. A liquid nitrogen release occurred at the Foundational Food Group, the FFG facility in Gainesville, Georgia. The incident began when liquid nitrogen overflowed from an immersion freezer in Plant 4. The release happened while maintenance workers were troubleshooting the operational issues that they were having with that freezer.
Interesting. Because now I actually like how you said that, the 8:45 to 10:15, because we don't know exactly when things went sideways.
It's funny. It just kind of hit me as I was looking at the time. I'm going, that's almost a 2-hour time gap. Like they had no clue what was going on for a really long time.
Well, the liquid nitrogen quickly vaporized and accumulated in a partially enclosed lower level room that lacked mechanical ventilation. So there's your two problems right there. You have, a cryogenic that rapidly flashed and became a problem now. And then two maintenance workers who were troubleshooting that freezer were fatally injured by asphyxiation. The release continued undetected for 30 to 60 minutes until another worker discovered a 4 to 5 foot high vapor cloud in the room.
I want to clarify a word you just said before we start getting the angry typing email guy. What do you mean flashed? Like you said the liquid nitrogen flashed. What do you mean by that?
So when you are artificially putting something into a phase it doesn't naturally want to be into, it wants to get back to its natural state. And so when you chill it, in this case, down and it hits something that warms it, it goes back and it springs back because gases are bigger than liquids. And so therefore it rapidly expands and it actually pushes the air out of the area.
So almost the same effect as a flash or a flashover, but there's no flame.
No flame.
Just to clarify that before somebody starts writing some angry emails. Oh, what do you mean nitrogen doesn't have a lower explosive limit? How can it flash? All right. Just figured I'd get that out of the way. Sorry, angry typing guy. No email from you today. Management initiated an evacuation, but during the process, at least 14 other FFG employees, including members of management, responded to the incident by either investigating the freezer, like, hey, what's going on, or going in to attempt the rescue of their coworkers. And as a result, some not so happy things happened.
Yeah. So we had 4 additional FFG employees were fatally injured by asphyxiation.
3 others were seriously injured and were presented with asphyxiation symptoms when first responders arrived.
And at least 7 other employees responded to and were not seriously injured. But there was a risk of nitrogen asphyxiation due to the proximity of the release.
And unfortunately, the FFG workforce lacked the knowledge of the hazards of nitrogen and its ability to create an oxygen-deficient environment. Since they didn't understand it, they were unable to recognize an oxygen-deficient environment. Of course, they lacked any equipment to be able to deal with it. They lacked any kind of PPE to be able to protect themselves in a situation where they could have made a safe entry into said oxygen-deficient environment.
Now, we have to analyze this failure because nobody walks away from these things without any dents in their fenders, if you know it. And unfortunately, people died in this one, but there's there's going to be a little bit of a forensic analysis afterwards. And so for us as first responders, understanding that analysis of the failure can teach you about the entire system. And it's not just a mechanical system that failed, in understanding how systems, including human systems, fail in an emergency. And that can allow us to better predict what the unexpected is when we are on scene.
Yeah, because the worst thing we can be in is a situation where we don't know that we don't know what we don't know. So the root cause of this incident was failure of an immersion freezer's liquid level control system that accurately measured and controlled the liquid nitrogen inside the freezer. I'm almost thinking of this like, and I know it's nothing like it, but almost like a giant toilet bowl type of a system, right? You got your liquid, it fills, it reaches a certain level, it kind of shuts off. And if that doesn't shut off, like your toilet could overflow if there's a backup. Yeah. The failure resulted in the deformation of a critical component called a bubbler tube. This was a key factor in contributing to the failure and the overall severity of the incident.
Interesting. Now, that design was vulnerable to a single point of failure. Once the bubble tube became bent, there was no other safeguards to prevent the release of the liquid nitrogen.
Now, this kind of lands under the concept of the manufacturing equipment and the design. The design team, they didn't adequately consider the consequences of the bubbler tube failure. Additionally, manufacturers' defects, like missing clamps, exacerbated the potential for the tube to get bent.
Now, one of the other things is that there was a lack of atmospheric monitoring, which is insane that FFG did not install atmospheric monitoring equipment in the freezer room, which could have detected the oxygen deficient atmosphere and triggered alarms or even automatic shutoffs.
You know, it's crazy. Like we sit and think of this as first responders, but there are companies very prestigious companies that we've gone and trained in very similar situations where they were dealing with nitrogen and they just didn't have, not that they didn't have the monitor equipment, but they didn't even have it really installed properly, where the sensors were kind of up at the ceiling. And it was kind of one of those situations where it's like, well, by the time the nitrogen reaches that sensor, what good is it going to do? The people are dead. So, that very concept kind of brings us to the idea, or reaffirms the idea, that we have to bring in all atmospheric monitoring with us, even if we think we can rely on stuff that's on scene. We can never hope that a system is in place and working that we can piggyback off of. So when you arrive on scene, you need to act like they're not working. If they are working, great, but don't rely on it as part of your overall response plan.
I like that. And as a hazmat technician, you have to ensure that you have the proper air monitoring equipment. Just in this situation for the oxygen deficient environments, right? Because we say this all the time is like, your oxygen sensor, or at least I say this, I know I say this in my classes, is that, the oxygen sensor, people think it's like, oh, it's how much displacement. It's kind of like a sub indicator of your combustible sensor. If it's showing too low, then it's telling you, hey, listen, knucklehead, that LEL sensor is kind of sus.
Yeah, if there had been a gas leak and a nitrogen leak at the same time, you would have never known there was a flammable gas in the air. And yeah, you could argue, well, then it wouldn't have burned. But in doing your operation, you need to know whether at some point you're going to ventilate, add oxygen, be in, right. So it just all these things kind of go into play. Right. And the oxygen deficient environment in and of itself, because nitrogen creates that oxygen deficient in the freezer room and the surrounding areas, there is supposed to be signs all over the place. This place didn't have them, and that led to firefighters entering a space without protection. It also led to the workers going in without protection. So we got to always kind of keep that head on a swivel and be thinking.
This. And we are recording. Perfect. Okay. Ready?
Yep.
Hey, Mike, pop quiz.
Oh, come on, man. I got like 1,000 PowerPoints going on. You really got to do this now?
You're downrange. You have a variety of non-transparent, opaque containers. How do you tell what's inside is dangerous or harmless?
Cats. Bring cats into the area, see what happens to them.
That works.
No, I'm just kidding. Meters. I'm going to be doing meters, right? I'm going to use whatever the appropriate meter is for the situation.
I like that. But which one? What's going to be able to sand through something like a shipping envelope or something?
Shipping envelope containers, I'm going to have to say a Ramen, and I'll go specifically with the Agilent handheld Ramen, the Resolve.
Nice. It's fast, less than 2 minutes. It'll identify explosives, narcotics, toxic industrial chemicals, chemical warfare agents, and even more, all through sealed and opaque containers.
I'm a tactile kind of guy, and I love this meter because it's got a simple interface, large display, and I'm not fumbling with buttons with my PPE on. It's tough because I'm clumsy as hell. It has an IP rating of 67. I can drop it, I can shock it, I can vibrate it, and the military says that I can, and it's going to survive the decon line, which, to be honest with you, is probably one of the most important parts of the system.
And for those super duper sketchy samples, you can take advantage of their remote control through the removable Wi-Fi connectivity.
I can honestly say that I have used this feature before, in which I was able to create and deploy my own library for a wide range of situations. It's a huge benefit.
Yeah, if you're evaluating different Raman handheld spectroscopy units, you should check out a report from New Steel. They did an evaluation of 10 Raman spectroscopy units, and the Agilent Resolve received the highest score of all the instruments. Check it out at explore.agilent.com/resolve, and the page has a link to the independent report from New Steel. Another thing is they didn't have a lot of preparedness. We didn't have a lot of pre-planning, if you would. FFG's workforce was not properly trained or equipped to handle a liquid nitrogen release, which blows my mind considering that's like what you're dealing in. That led to multiple fatalities during the rescue attempts.
Right. We often teach in class that when we're going into a facility, try to find someone with working knowledge of the chemical that's being used. Right. While this is a great thing to keep in mind and a great thing to train, we have to keep in mind that you may actually get into a situation where nobody has a freaking clue what's going on.
Yeah, that's where that unfamiliarity with the facility, right? I don't have your location memorized. So without me being priorly coordinated with you, anybody, the fire department, the police department, whoever, is probably going to be unfamiliar with the layout, the hazards, the systems, the fact that it didn't have meters. Like, somebody might be like, hey, do you think we should put a meter there? They're like, oh, that's a good idea, you know?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, anytime you have lack of information, you don't have, right, that the fire department doesn't have lack of information, and the facility doesn't do their part in being proactive, both on an ERP side and interacting with the fire department, it's more likely to make it challenging for firefighters to quickly assess and respond to the situation appropriately.
And one of the things we always say, like, and it's kind of an easy one, is, I don't want to say it's easy because I'm almost minimalizing it, is that, and we talked about this on the show the other night, we on the round table, where you wouldn't really go to an EMS run with an SCBA on your face piece. Mm-hmm. Right. So what if the fire department, the police department, the EMS comes into this place for somebody that's felt a little, under the weather, felt a little dizzy or whatever it is. We go to these things all the time. And I wouldn't say that they should be wearing the SCBA literally on their back, let alone on their face.
I mean, you can almost see it, right? Like, if a firefighter, operations level guy, was responding to a chemical factory, right? They're going to be like, their spider sensors are going to be tingling. They'll be like, okay, I got to look out for hazmats. You're going to a chicken processing center. Like, a regular firefighter is going to be sitting in the back of the rig going, ugh, what's the worst that's going to happen? Like, I'm going to step on a dead chicken, right? So we're not thinking about the hazards that are necessarily involved. And if you knew about nitrogen, you would know that it was a colorless, odorless gas that can create dangerous atmospheres without any kind of, generalized signs, which means that as a firefighter, when you're arriving on scene and you're not thinking of the hazards, you're relying solely on markings to recognize that the hazard could even exist. Unfortunately, with this lack of cooperation back and forth, there was nobody to identify that the issue existed before the AHJ responded. It's just a sad thing. And also emergency shutoffs, right? When we go tour facilities, we're looking at things like emergency shutoffs. How do I isolate? We familiarize ourselves with the components of the cryogenic system. And while I may not be the one responding, I'm certainly going to put notes in a notebook so that when my team gets there, they can be like, oh, hey, yeah, this jackass was there last year. Oh, he says X, Y, and Z does A, B, C. So it's the interaction with industry and the cooperation is absolutely critical in getting a lot of these things resolved and to reduce the hazards of the firefighters.
Right. And even they had a lack of process safety management. Okay. And so when you have FFG, they lacked a documented process safety management policy. And they did not even implement a critical safety practices that could have prevented or mitigated the incident. So they didn't even have, like, what do they call that? They call that when you do like ERP? A due diligence. No, I guess it would be an ERP. Like, you should be doing like almost like a risk checklist. Like, hey, are we prepared? Do we have these safeguards in place? Or do we have the newest phone number for the fire chief? Or do I know who to call to pick up these batteries? And like, there should be some. If you're not doing that as a not only the industry, because I'm not going to say it's purely FFG. The fire department kind of, I want to say, owns a little bit of this because they should be going in and checking the math a little bit.
They should be. They should be. But, the management should be in a position, too, to make sure that the ERP for awareness level personnel goes off without a hitch. Now, what do I mean by that? When you start dealing with industry and OSHA and HAZWOP and HAZCOM, we deal with this a lot when we're doing a lot of our industry training. Is we're looking specifically to make sure that the emergency action plan is initiated and somebody has full control over it. So when management or an employee starts to run in to be like, I need to go check this out, somebody's going, no. Listen, I know you loved Joe, but you have to leave. Like, I can't risk 4 more people dead because 2 people are already down. So that command structure, that sense of having already been trained into what is right or wrong in a hazmat situation, that was missing. When we look at this from a large picture point of view, the Chemical Safety Board, which is, by the way, where this report came from, recognized that there was a specific lack of cryogenic asphyxiation regulations, meaning that, there were things that FFG didn't do, but they were also not required by law to implement certain safety systems and practices. So that needs to be addressed.
They also had some problems with the ineffective product maintenance. Now, Messer, who was the supplier of the liquid nitrogen and equipment, did not effectively maintain the equipment in the freezer process and continued supplying FFG despite knowing that there was some safety issues there.
You know, I'm the last person to be saying this because, towards the end of my career, I was really crappy with jumping on and checking the rig and looking at equipment. But, I mean, that statement right there just highlights the fact that it is so necessary to make sure that all of your equipment that you're bringing on scene works, because you cannot trust anybody else's equipment, especially in industry, because you just don't know if it's going to be reliable when you go to use it.
Yeah, so there's a few key difficulties that the fire department likely faced when responding to this liquid nitrogen, incident. Like what?
Oh, well, you have limited visibility, right? So the report indicates that there was a 4 to 5 foot high wall of vapor cloud filling the room. This makes it almost virtually impossible to see or to do a search, severely limits the visibility of first responders. And in that mix were multiple victims down. So imagine the stress level when there are 6 fatalities and multiple injuries, firefighters going in to perform rescue operations, and they're faced with this complex situation, a triage situation, a zero visibility situation, and a rescue situation. And to be honest with you, we're not, as fire departments nowadays, we're not really well trained in zero visibility searches anymore. Most of the times we've got a thermal imaging camera and we're doing a lot of big area searches that, being able to see.
There was also the ongoing hazard, right? If we have this leak, it's not like it stopped. Or I'm going to assume it didn't stop. But you got to remember, when this stuff is leaking out of the tank, it's still leaking out of the tank, still flashing to the gas, still pushing out the air. And so if, let's say, they have ventilation profiles set up and they are doing, they're pushing in and they have the doors open, if your ventilation isn't changing the air faster than it's flashing to gas and displacing, you're not moving the ball, right? So, the continued presence of that liquid nitrogen and the potential for further vaporization posed an ongoing threat to the response. And then there was also a language barrier, because the majority of the FFG's workforce did not speak English as their primary language. That could have complicated the communication during the emergency response, and like, hey, listen, we need you guys to move this way. No hablo. Or whatever it was.
Right. Or, hey, what's going on here? Sprechen Sie Deutsch? I think it's Sprechen Sie.
Yeah. So.
Injured responder on this one also could have played a role in difficulties for the fire department. I don't know whether these guys responded well to a downed firefighter or not. It's just one of those things that you always have to keep in the back of your mind. Now, this is a non-fire situation. Clearly, they weren't expecting a hazmat if he's walking in without the proper PPE and went down from asphyxiation. So are you ready at all times to implement a Mayday type of a situation?
Interesting.
Yeah, but think about it, right? Like and then in a situation where it's right, we have a fire, we've got fast teams that are in place, we've got designated rescue teams, they're standing by. This may not have been set up that way, and then all of a sudden you have a mayday, you have a rescue situation that takes place. What personnel are you pulling for? Are your guys disciplined enough to continue with their task, not drop what they're doing and run to go help their buddy?
That happens all the time. That is a purely disciplined operation, and that takes training. You can ask 1,000 emergency responders how many people have practiced doing firefighter removal or hazmat writ, and people, we all practice that. How many people practice being the victim? Like, it's like almost nobody. And I'm like, why hasn't everybody practiced this? Get good at being the problem. Because nobody is always the hero.
And get good at being the bystander, right? Like, you might be in the hallway with the guys who are trying to pull somebody out. Do your job. If your job is not firefighter removal, right, step out of the way and do your job, because your job is still critical to the rest of the mission. Now, as long as we're talking about, rescues and stuff like that, the difference between a rescue and a recovery. Be prepared to make those difficult decisions regarding like a rescue attempt versus a recovery attempt. Without the proper equipment and training, a rescue attempt can lead to additional casualties. And that is both on the industrial side true as well as the firefighter side.
I like it. Good stuff. We'll see you guys next week.